Hi guys, it's Kirsty. Today's video is about reassurance. But before I get started, please do subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below in order to stay up to date with all the great new videos as they're released. So this is a very important topic to cover in regards to OCD because reassurance is one of the main forms that compulsions can take place in. In fact, in some ways, most compulsions are a form of gaining reassurance, aren't they? Because, you know, trying to get reassurance is to make you feel more comfortable and to bring the uncomfortable sensations down. And that's the purpose of compulsions, really, isn't it? But for the sake of simplicity, I just want to focus on specific compulsions that are reassurance seeking. So these would be compulsions in the form of asking for reassurance, firstly. So asking people, other people around you, whether that's your partner, friends, family, or therapist for reassurance. And the subtle ways that we can find ourselves doing it, perhaps without even realizing. And then I do want to cover a couple of other smaller ways. Well, I say smaller, they're not at all, but a couple of other ways that we would reassurance seek. Firstly, self-reassuring, so giving ourselves reassurance in our minds. And then also, I want to briefly cover researching as a means to gain reassurance that it's definitely OCD and that the worst case scenario or feared scenario isn't actually real. And I will cover that off briefly because there are other videos about researching specifically when it comes to OCD, but I do think it's important to mention it because it is a form of reassurance, is the being reminded that it actually is OCD. And I feel that it's important. From my perspective, it's important because it was one of my biggest compulsions. And I have to say, one of my more expensive compulsions as well, the obsessive researching as well. So I wanted to cover that off. But I will start off by talking about what we would consider the main kind of reassurance behaviour, compulsion in OCD, and that's asking for reassurance from others. So firstly, again, this can be a bit black and white. So we might see confessing as being a means of gaining reassurance because you might want a response from the person that you're confessing to. So your reassurance seeking from other people may come in the form of confessing. So for example, in relationship OCD, and I apologise that this is quite often my example, but it's the theme that I am most versed in. So it might be confessing thoughts to your partner, then your partner, if you've got into a bit of a habit with your partner, with them saying, but you know it's not you, it's your OCD. So that might be sort of a form of reassurance seeking there. It may also be asking your partner, you know I love you, you love me, don't you? Well, everything's okay with us. I feel like something's off. Is it off? So it might be constantly wanting to speak to your partner about you not feeling quite right. Or, you know, this is normal in a relationship, isn't it? It might be speaking to your friends and family, asking the same questions, saying, I don't feel extreme love today. That's normal in a relationship, isn't it? Or you might be asking other people questions about their relationships. You know, you don't have sex more than 5 times a week or more than 2 times a week or whatever. Again, that's kind of picking for information. That's asking for reassurance, essentially, indirectly. In terms of other themes, so it might be harm OCD. You know I wouldn't do this. I'm having these thoughts, but you know I'm a good person, don't you? We know I'm a good person. So you might be asking your friends or family to confirm that you're a good person, that you don't actually want to kick your dog, or you're not going to drop your baby. Or again, in POCD, it might be, you know I would never do anything terrible to a child. You know I'm a good person. So again, it's asking other people to confirm that you're a good person. Obviously, we've covered on this channel that good people and bad people don't exist. But if you're still holding on to the notion of trying to be a good person, 100% good person, or people being 100% good or 100% bad, it might be just simply that you want confirmation that you're a nice, good person. In terms of other themes, so with contamination, the reassurance aspect, obviously, well, I say obviously, but, you know, overall, we might view perhaps the most obvious, famous compulsion with contamination, OCD and obsessions is the hand washing. So if we go with hand washing, for example, you may ask whoever you live with, your partner, your housemate, your mum, your dad, your sibling, can you watch me wash my hands to make sure I've covered enough or I've done it enough? Or it might be asking them, the soap that we got, it's definitely antibacterial, isn't it? It definitely will kill the COVID germs or virus or whatever. So it might be asking for confirmation that your soap is effective enough, or that you've definitely washed your hands enough. Or if it's, for example, your feared scenario is something bad happened to your house, or that you're afraid of setting fire to house, or something like that, that's led to a checking light switches or electricity sockets compulsion. It may then be asking whoever you live with to watch you as you turn the light off, and then you go to bed and then you want to check that you've actually turned it off downstairs, but then you say, I did definitely do that, didn't it? So essentially, it's removing any kind of uncertainty, or in fact, trying to remove any uncertainty that you did that you definitely did the thing that you wanted to do. You definitely cleaned your hands properly and the soap is effective enough, or that you did switch the light off. Or perhaps if you've got a newborn baby and you're having, maybe it's a combination of contamination and harm or something, I definitely did sterilise the bottle correctly, didn't I? You might ask your partner. So it's essentially asking somebody else to confirm that you did your compulsion correctly, or that you don't need to do a physical compulsion like a rechecking or a re-hand washing after doing something just once. It's basically refusing to sit with the discomfort and refusing to sit with the doubt. You're relying on somebody else to take away your discomfort and your doubt. And whether that's in the form of them saying, oh, no, that's normal. We all have thoughts like that from time to time. Or, no, you'll never do it. You've got OCD, so you'd never do it. So you're relying on that person to confirm what you're doubting, essentially. But the problem is that sometimes these things can come in very subtle ways. So you think you've eliminated main reassurance seeking, yet you might find yourself asking subtly reassurance seeking. So for people who are in the OCD recovery WhatsApp groups, you have to keep an eye on each other, really, because you can find yourself subtly, without even realizing, reassurance seeking. And sometimes it's helpful if other people say, hang on there, I'm not answering that, that's reassurance. And you might start to spot that in a sense that you might be asking continuous questions, or you might be sort of bending scenarios and asking questions. So you might be like, if you're feeling basically unsatisfied that you know enough about the topic to be able to be rational, you might keep asking and asking, and that's when your OCD is getting hungry and it's questioning more and more. And the more you kind of dig in, the more you're feeding it. And it has to basically get to a point when you just have to be like, I don't need to know any more about, how you can contract AIDS. I've done my research, I've looked at the science, and now it has to be sitting with the uncertainty. And it comes to a point where, you have to even be uncertain about whether you're doing it all right, whether you're doing recovery right, because you can start reassurance seeking. this form of treatment will definitely get me better, won't it? Again, reassurance seeking, there's no uncertainty there. You've probably already been told that, you know, these methods, you know, have really improved some people. But that's not good enough. You need to get more and more. And then you go away and you think about it, and then you want more and more. So, I mean, I could go on for ages talking about the many ways that we could find ourselves reassurance seeking. And it's starting to recognize within yourself what your patterns are with reassurance seeking. And also the patterns with OCD recovery generally. Quite often you notice that the reassurance seeking might be moving away from the core theme or core themes and more towards, am I doing recovery right? You know, or is it's definitely OCD, isn't it? Or just asking people more and more about their themes and their specific thoughts is kind of reassurance seeking, because again, it's your OCD is wanting confirmation that yours is definitely OCD, but the only evidence that's acceptable for that is if other people have exactly the same themes and thoughts, and their compulsions are exactly the same. Otherwise, it won't be acceptable to OCD. And of course, as we know, no two peoples are exactly the same. You can have big similarities and similar patterns with different people, but we will never find somebody whose OCD has presented itself in 100% exactly the same way as ours. Or it's very unlikely that we'll find that person, because they might be on the other side of the world. And even if that person did exist, their experience tomorrow might be different from your experience tomorrow, and their perspective will therefore be different to yours, and their beliefs may be then slightly different, so then it's not the same. So it's very difficult to find somebody with exactly the same OCD as yours. So don't even bother trying. If you start having thoughts, you know, if you start finding yourself poking for that kind of information, just stop right there, partner, because it's not going to happen. So I think it's quite important to then cover self-reassurance. So I'm not going to go into rumination, because there's lots of videos on this channel about rumination. But obviously that can come in the form of rumination. You know, analysis is essentially, you know, trying to get to the bottom of it, trying to work it out in order to reassure yourself. But I'm simply referring to, when I say self-reassurance, it might be, this is just my OCD, this is not me, I am not my thoughts. So it might be that you want to label it as OCD, this is OCD, it's okay, it's OCD, it's okay, that thought's just OCD every time. And unfortunately, that can become self-reassurance. And also it kind of gets to the point where there's no point, because you don't believe yourself when you're saying it. You know, if you're trying to label it to stop yourself getting into rumination, all right, fine. But don't expect to always believe yourself when you say, it's not me, it's my OCD. But, you know, it might be that you know, you want to quickly run through the scenario in your mind to make sure that you don't want that to happen, or you're not enjoying that, in order to reassure yourself. So you're kind of mentally replaying. But again, that's another compulsion in itself. Essentially, it's just reminding yourself, it's not me, it's my OCD. But then we get into the researching aspect of it as well. And this is, again, to remind yourself that it's not you, it's your OCD. So this might be researching your specific topic again, even though, so you've already researched your topic, let's face it, you've definitely done that before you've sought help for OCD, before you've realised that maybe it's even OCD. So let's assume you've already done some research, or a lot of research. Let's assume that, depending on your theme, that you and your therapist or OCD coach have said, okay, let's do a bit of research to get the science surrounding it so we can look at it more rationally. So let's assume we've already maybe done that if necessary. So I'm talking about the research that comes after that, that's done in the moment to remind yourself it's not you, it's your OCD. So whether that's watching videos to remind yourself, oh no, that person, okay, it is definitely OCD. So you're doing that again to eliminate the doubt. Or that you're doubting if it's OCD again, so you're going to have to read another OCD book, because hopefully they'll talk about the new symptoms that you're experiencing, so you're reassuring yourself it's OCD again. Or you're you're experiencing a new symptom with OCD. Okay, I'm just going to Google that one to make sure that's definitely OCD again. So if it's done, you know, it might be research done in the moment in order to eliminate any doubt again if something new crops up. I just want to make sure that's OCD, rather than thinking this is familiar. It's not exactly the same as what I've experienced before, but I'm doubting myself again. Let's leave it for a couple of days and see what happens. I'm going to be uncomfortable. So that's what I recommend, is what I'm saying is, if you suspect it might be OCD that you're experiencing, assume it is, I would suggest. If it's presenting itself in a similar form, the way it has done previously, don't go researching it again. It's because if it's a new physical sensation, you know, if it's something like, you've maybe vaguely heard it mentioned as a physical sensation of anxiety, but you just want to Google it to check because you haven't experienced it before. Don't, because you know it's likely to be that. And if you're Googling it to remind yourself, then you're trying to seek certainty, and you'll get certainty for 10 minutes and then you'll want to check it up again. So it comes to a point where you have to accept that enough information's enough, and you've asked for reassurance enough times, and you just have to accept then that your OCD is going to keep grabbing for more and making you feel uncomfortable, and you can't run away from that discomfort anymore, because it's time to stop running if you want to get better, basically. And this is the whole point. It's being willing to feel uncomfortable. It's being willing to have your brain throw up further ways that your feared scenario can be true, even if it's, you know, but it feels different this time. Yeah, that's the whole point. OCD, you know, your mind's making ways to make it feel different this time in order to get your attention. If it didn't, then you would be able to just get used to it and you know that it's the same as it was before. OCD is smart. It's yours. It's in your mind. You can't outsmart your OCD. So that's, you know, it's always going to feel real. It's always, you know, it will feel, you know, quite often if it gets your attention, it's because it feels different this time. You have to be uncomfortable knowing that it feels different this time, knowing that this time it might be different. That's the key, because you've done your research, you've already asked for reassurance enough times, you've read enough about OCD to know that it's probably OCD, or to know that this could be my OCD playing up again. So now you need to be taking that chance that it is your OCD, and be uncomfortable with the fact that there's a small chance that it might not be. So I hope this has been informative and useful for you. Talk about various ways that we reassurance seek, whether that's, you know, like I say, self-reassurance. It could be reminding yourself that it is definitely OCD with research, or it could be the classic reassurance seeking of asking other people simply to watch you do stuff and confirm that it's, you know, confirm you've done it right. You're relying on other people to help you temporarily being the key word, eliminate your doubt. But it is temporary, because the doubt will come back. It's only a matter of time. But thank you very much for watching, and I will see you soon, and take care. Bye.